The court said, and the defense may call its next witness.
Ms. Strofa said, Your Honor, may I have a moment to go get the witness?
The court said yes.
Ms. Strofa said, Thank you.
Witness sworn.
Ms. Strofa said, May I, Your Honor?
The court said you may.
Lai Dai, called as a witness by the defendant, having been duly sworn, testified as follows. Direct examination. By Ms. Strofa.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Dai, could you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what is GTV?
The court said, Sir, state your name and spell it.
The witness said, Lai Dai, L-A-I-D-A-I.
Mr. Dai, could you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what is GTV?
GTV is a global-wise multimedia platform. And because of the whistleblower movement, it emerged from there. Then Mr. Guo is the main speaker or broadcaster of the platform. And it's promoting the freedom of speech as well as religion, and also it's a bridge between China and Western world. And on that platform, there are a lot of multimedia technology, such as YouTube or G-Talk. And some social media functions.
Mr. Dai, did there come a time when you learned that the members of the whistleblower movement could invest in GTV?
And that is May of 2020, that's when I learned about it.
And how did you learn about it?
On one hand, through the broadcasts of Mr. Guo, and the other is through my comrades. Discussion with my comrades. But at that time I didn't know the investment project is GTV because Mr. Guo in his broadcast has never mentioned it.
When you say you discussed it with did you say? I couldn't hear the word. But do you mean your fellow fighters that you discussed it with?
Yes, they mentioned there is such an investment opportunity.
And when did you have these discussions?
Roughly about May of 2020. It's not really a discussion. I just saw them and heard them talk about this information.
And did you view this as an investment opportunity?
Yes, I view it as an investment opportunity. But at the time I didn't know I was qualified to do this type of investment.
And during that time, in May of 2020, where were you living?
I live in Germany.
And how long have you lived in Germany as of May of 2020?
Roughly about 17 to 18 years.
And before that, where did you live?
I was in China before 2003.
And did you go to school in China?
Yes.
And are you married?
Yes.
Did you meet your wife in China or in Germany?
We were classmates in high school, and we were boyfriend-girlfriend starting in college.
And did she also accompany you when you left China and moved to Germany?
She came 1 year after me.
Mr. Dai, could you tell me where you went to school in terms of college?
I have 2 bachelor degree, one in law and one in MBA management, and in Germany. I have a master degree in law, in Germany.
So did you get the master's degree of law as a student in a German university?
Yes.
Now going back to evaluating the investment opportunity in GTV, could you tell us what steps you took to decide whether or not you wanted to invest in GTV?
First of all, I heard about this opportunity. Then I learned that to have more information about how to invest and I need to communicate with my fellow comrades. Or fellow fighters, to get more information. At that time I chose a famous comrade, her name is Sarah. And I contacted her and inquired about the details of this investment. And I told her I would like to invest $100,000 plus, say, $150,000.
Mr. Dai, who is Sarah?
Sarah is one of the known fellow fighters during the whistleblower movement because she contributed a great deal for this movement.
And does Sarah have a last name that you know of?
Her family name is Wei.
And Mr. Dai, did you want to invest in GTV immediately or did you want to think about it?
I need to see more detailed information to be able to decide if I will invest or not.
And what information did you want to take a look at before deciding whether or not to invest?
I think I would like to see, for example, its business plan for the requirement to the investors and how much money required or any related information to see if I can make a successful investment. And before I knew all this information, it's not possible for me to make a decision. And also personally, I believe it's an interactive, two-way process, because if I wanted to invest, maybe I'm not going to be accepted.
Mr. Dai, did you have any concerns about investing in GTV?
I didn't understand. I didn't understand the interpreter, what he said.
The interpreter said, the interpreter will repeat.
To invest in GTV. As a matter of fact, to do any investment, GTV or not, there's still going to be risk associated with it.
Mr. Horton said, objection. Non-responsive.
The court said, "So sir, the answer is stricken. I want you to listen carefully to the question and then only answer what has been asked of you. Don't add additional information."
The answer is yes.
What were the concerns you had before deciding to invest in GTV?
Just like I said earlier, I need to see the documents of this investment and to see if I have the capacity to do this investment. Yes.
Were you concerned that GTV was a startup company?
Mr. Horton said, objection to the leading.
The court said, "All right. So I'm going to permit some leading so that we can be more efficient. Go ahead."
Was one of the concerns that you had that GTV was a startup company?
That's not much of my concern at the time because before I made the investment, GTV has been in existence and operated and I have some experience with it. It was great even though it's a startup company. But the development end made me to be very confident about this company.
Mr. Dai, did there come a time when you decided to invest in GTV?
Mr. Horton said, objection. Asked and answered.
The court said, sustained. Don't answer.
What is it that the GTV platform would carry, according to you?
What's on the GTV platform?
Yes.
GTV has lots of the live stream and also broadcasting functions. And they can also provide social and communication function. And there has already been some digital currencies function so you can also pay when they do the live stream. You can pay up the live streamer.
Were you interested in the news of the live stream that was on GTV?
Yes, I was very interested in the content of those broadcasts.
Could you tell the jury what content it was that interested you?
At that time there was a lot of whistleblower about what the reality is in China, by Mr. Guo. As a Chinese myself, I would like to know and be very interested in this kind of information. He also would provide a lot of new political, economic trends. And also there are a lot of the live stream by other people to do all type of broadcasting, including politics, economics, bodybuild and also gourmet cooking.
Did you think that investing in GTV carried risks?
Yes, there is risk.
Did you think that investing in GTV carried any more or less risk than any other investment?
It's not going to be more risk. It's going to be less risk than others, investment opportunities. And it's also possible to have a higher risk because some of the content it carried are focusing on the CCPEN, who might want to interfere with the development of the GTV. And GTV, there's a lot of projects that is to also have competitors, so it's very challenging.
Mr. Dai, could you tell the jury what you do for a living now?
Right now I have my own company. I'm doing e-commerce.
And in deciding whether or not to invest in GTV, did you consider any quantitative data?
Yes, at that time Alexa, provided by Amazon, they do the web traffic evaluation. So I look at the GTV's traffic trend, I see it's a very good development trend.
What do you mean by Alexa traffic trend? Could you explain that?
Correct, yes. Because that's specialized in monitoring such particular website. The web traffic that's created online.
Was there any other quantitative data that you looked at before deciding to invest in GTV?
At that time, that's one of the factors that I considered to invest, but more importantly, I have watched carefully, read carefully of those investment documents and the manual. So I think the investment plan very competitive. It's with very good potential and perspective.
Did the fact that GTV not have advertisements on its platform influence your decision to invest in it?
No, that's a good function. Because I do not hope platform with content would be impacted by the advertisers or advertisement because this platform. The aim is to provide the truth as well as the freedom of speech. In addition, without the ad, the user can be more directly pay whoever the broadcaster was for the particular content he or she provided, and so those broadcasters can concentrate on their content to generate more income. So there is their own system generated on this platform.
Did your own experience in e-commerce allow you to explore search rankings and other information related to GTV?
Yes. Because of my work, my business, I'm pretty sensitive to this type.
And how long have you had this business?
My own company. I started in 2012.
Now, Mr. Dai, could you tell the jury how much you invested in GTV?
In GTV, total investment is $155,000, total, US dollars.
Was that the total that you invested?
Yes, total is the value of my stock got from GTV is $155,000 US.
The interpreter said, Your Honor, may the interpreters have a minute.
The court said, a moment? Okay, go ahead.
Are you ready, Mr. Dai?
Yes.
Okay. What was the first step that you took in your investment in GDV? Could you tell us? And could you just give the translator enough time to translate, please?
Yes, I'm willing to introduce my whole process of investment. First, I get in contact with Sarah. Ask her about relevant investment information.
Okay, let me stop you there. How did you come to contact Sarah?
I contact Sarah through Discord.
And what is Discord?
Discord is a communicating software that fellow fighters use among us.
And after you contacted Sarah, what did you do?
I told her after I told her I was going to invest $155,000, she sent me VOG's information.
And what is VG?
VOG should be Sarah's company.
And did you have an understanding at that time who was permitted to invest directly into GDV?
At that time I did not attend the official investment document into GTV. Obviously Sarah gave me the wrong information.
Mr. Horton said, Objection, Your Honor.
Because I need to invest more than $100,000.
Ms. Strofa said, Your Honor, may we just have a quick sidebar, Your Honor?
The court said yes.
Ms. Strofa said, Thank you.
At the sidebar,
Ms. Strofa said, Your Honor, could you ask the witness if he's having trouble with the headset or the headpiece? Something's not working out correctly from the way he's looking, and he keeps tugging at the right side of his ear. I don't want to bring it up in front of the jury, but I don't know. And we've not had any problems with him before. So,
Mr. Horton said, Well, for whatever it's worth, I haven't observed him having difficulty with the equipment. The answers are coming quickly. There were 1 or 2 occasions where I thought they weren't responsive. Which has been, in both parties' experience. From time to time with witnesses who are testifying through a different language. So I don't totally see the basis for adjusting the equipment. But my objection, which I was hoping was a quick one, was that I didn't think it matched the question and the way that suggested misunderstanding.
The court said, I don't agree with you. He seems to want to volunteer information that is favorable to Mr. Gua. That's my sense. So he may be just disregarding your questions. I can certainly remind him that he needs to answer what has been asked.
Ms. Strofa said, Your Honor, I made a record of what I observed him to be having trouble with. If the government doesn't want to take up my offer, that's fine, but I think he's having trouble with the headset. I didn't say he was having any trouble with the interpretation. I think he's having trouble with the headset.
The court said, So I will make an inquiry about the equipment.
Ms. Strofa said, Thank you.
The court said, Okay.
continued on next page. In open court,
The court said, Sir, is the headset equipment working all right?
the witness said, Earlier, I couldn't hear very clearly, but now is good.
The court said, All right. You may continue.
By Ms. Schrofa.
Mr. Dai, did there come a time when you contacted Sarah Wei about investing in VG?
Mr. Horton said, Objection. Asked and answered.
The court said, I'm going to permit the answer. Go ahead.
Yes, I contacted Sarah. She provided me with VOG's investment information. But I did not mean to invest in VOG. I want to invest in GTV.
Mr. Dai, if you could just listen to my question.
The court said, All right. So, sir, it's very important that you listen carefully to the question, and then you answer only what is asked of you. So if you're asked what is your favorite color, let's assume that it's blue, you would say blue. But you don't also say, and my favorite dessert is ice cream. That's volunteering information that has not been asked. Do you understand?
The witness said, Understood.
The court said, Go ahead.
By Ms. Schrofa.
And did Sarah Wei respond to your inquiry about how to invest?
Yes, she did.
And how did she respond?
She sent me a message on Discord, including method to invest in VOG and a link. Within the link, it has some material regarding investing in VOG.
Okay. Now did you open the link?
I did.
Did you fill out the forms?
Yes.
Did you send her money?
I did.
How much money did you send Saraway?
$155,000.
And how did you send the money to Saraway?
Through bank transfer.
And did Saraway acknowledge receiving the money?
She kept saying she did not receive the money.
And when Saraway said she did not receive the money, did you take any steps to figure out where that money was?
Yes, I get in contact with my bank to search this transfer information. And I even called the receiver's bank, Wells Fargo, and I contact Sarah many times, ask her to verify this transfer. And she kept telling me that she did not see the transfer.
Okay, Mr. Dai, did there come a time when you just never heard back from Saraway?
Yes, she was slow in response and subsequently, and she
I'm just going to stop you there, okay?
pretty much did not respond me at all.
Okay. Did you do anything? Were you concerned that she wasn't responding to you?
At first few days, I was not concerned because I did not realize this was a mistake. Then I soon discovered that the correct way to invest in GTV is get in contact with Mr. Gua and get in contact with investment committee.
Okay. Mr. Dai, was there a reason that you were in a rush?
Correct, because I came to know about the private placement opportunity later on and during the pandemic. And I was very busy with my work and I came to know about the information in May.
And were you worried that if Saraway did not receive the money in time, you would miss out on an opportunity?
Yes, I was very concerned.
The court said, all righty. So it's now 2:30. We'll take our half of an hour break and we'll continue at 3 p.m. Sir, you may step out of the courtroom.
Witness not present.
The court said, don't discuss the case, don't permit anyone to discuss it in your presence, don't read, watch, or listen to anything having anything to do with this matter.
Jury not present.
The court said, you may be seated. Is there anything before we resume at 3 p.m.?
Mr. Horton said, not from the government. Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Shrofa said, no, Your Honor. Thank you.
The court said, all righty.
Recess. Jury not present.
The court said, please be seated. Ms. Shroff.
Ms. Shrofa said, we tried to work out the issues on the break, but we are having issues of how he's hearing the interpreter.
The court said, is it worked out? In the meantime, Ms. Shroff, consider leading. You may be seated. Well, we're going to have to stand for the jurors, so. All righty. Are we ready?
The interpreter said, interpreter is ready.
The court said, all righty. Let's have the jurors.
The law clerk said, jury entering.
Jury present.
The court said, please be seated. Members of the jury, it is 3:07. I was late in bringing you out because we were having some difficulties with the audio, so now we're ready. You may continue.
Ms. Shrofa said, thank you, Your Honor.
By Ms. Shrofa.
Mr. Dai, did you ever get back the money that you sent to Saraway?
I received the money from SEC.
After you sent the money to Saraway, you then contacted Miles Gua, correct?
Yes.
And you contacted Miles Gua on WhatsApp, is that correct?
Correct.
And on WhatsApp, when you contacted Miles Gua, you got a voice note from him, correct?
Yes.
At that time, you did not actually have a dialogue with Miles Gua, correct?
Before that, no.
And after you got the voice note, let me back up. The voice note was sent to you on WhatsApp, correct?
Yes.
And had you used WhatsApp in your work, in your line of work before?
Yes, I have.
And when you got the voice note, you listened to the voice note, correct?
Yes, I heard it.
Then there came a time that Miles Gua or somebody from that number sent you documents, correct?
Yes.
And the documents that was sent to you were about GTV, right?
Yes.
So let me show you what is marked as GXVK4. Do you see this document?
Yes.
And do you recognize it?
Yes.
And do you recognize it to be one of the documents that Miles Gua sent you in the WhatsApp voice note that you got on WhatsApp?
Yes.
Ms. Shrofa said, the defense moves GXVK4 into evidence.
Mr. Horton said, no objection.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendants exhibit GXVK 4 received in evidence. By Ms. Shrofa.
Can I also show the witness DX60724?
The interpreter said, Your Honor, may I have a minute? Go ahead, please. I cannot see it on my screen.
Ms. Shrofa said, This is just for the witness. The second document is Defense Exhibit 60724. You see that, Mr. Dai?
Yes.
And is this also one of the documents that you received through that voice note that you got from Miles Gua's number?
Yes.
Ms. Shrofa said, the defense moves DX 60724 into evidence.
Mr. Horton said, no objection.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit 60724 received in evidence. By Ms. Shrofa.
Now, Mr. Dai, if you could take a look at the document on the left side, which is the government exhibit. Do you read English?
I could read some English.
And could you read from the third sentence of the first paragraph? Please read all. Could you read that out loud in English for the jury and keep your voice up, would you, please, Mr. Dai?
Please read all the documents carefully before making a decision. Please be aware that the Chinese version of these documents are for ease of reference. But the English versions are the controlling documents. As such, please complete and return the English versions only, and all information should be completed in English.
When you received this document, did you read it in English?
I read in Mandarin Chinese first, and then I have read both English and Chinese version.
Let's start with the document that you read first. The document that you read first is to your right, correct?
Correct.
And the document on the right is a translation of the document on the left, correct?
Correct.
So you read the Mandarin version, and then after that you read the English version, correct?
Correct.
And did you follow the instruction that says that the English version is the controlling document?
Mr. Horton said, objection to the testimony of Ms. Shroff.
The court said, excuse me.
Mr. Horton said, objection.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
And as directed, did you complete and return the English versions of this application form?
Yes, I fill the English form and send it back.
Let me show you what is in evidence now as GXVK5. The two documents I showed you previously accompanied this document in the voice note, correct?
Yes.
Did you read this document?
I read it.
And did you read it in English, or did you read it in Mandarin?
I read both versions.
And did you read the entire document in both languages?
Yes.
Let me show you what is now marked as GXVK7. Okay, do you see this document?
Yes.
Could you read the title for the jury, please, and keep your voice up if you can?
Stockholders Agreement.
Could we scroll down, please? And did you read this document?
Yes.
Did you read it in English, in Mandarin, or both?
Both.
Ms. Shrofa said, the defense moves GXVK7 into evidence.
Mr. Horton said, no objection.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit GXVK 7 received in evidence. By Ms. Shrofa.
Let me show you GXVK 8. Did you read this document, the confidentiality agreement?
Yes.
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, at this time we move this version into evidence GXVK 8.
Mr. Horton said, no objection.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit GXVK 8 received in evidence. By Ms. Shrofa.
Now I've gone through several documents with you, Mr. Dai. You received each one of these documents in that voice note, correct?
Mr. Horton said, asked and answered.
Ms. Shrofa said, I'll move on. How many times would you say you read each one of these documents?
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, we object in view of the court's Tuesday morning ruling.
Ms. Shrofa said, I'll move on.
The court said, okay.
Mr. Dai, what did you do after you read these documents?
After I finish reading those documents, I signed it and I sent the signature page back to the investment committee's WhatsApp number.
And you signed the English version of the document, correct?
Correct.
You first submitted the documents to Voice of Gua, and then, after that you submitted them directly to GTV, correct?
Mr. Horton said, asked and answered, Your Honor.
The court said, sustained.
Mr. Dai, you did not get anything in return for the $155,000 that you sent to Sarah, correct?
No.
And there came a time in 2021 that you learned that other GTV investors had had the same experience with Sarah Wei, correct?
Mr. Horton said, Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
The court said, overruled.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, it goes right into Tuesday morning's ruling. If we have to have a sidebar, it flies right into the Tuesday morning's ruling.
The court said, if you'll step up.
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
The court said, your concern is his just speaking about his own investing experience?
Mr. Horton said, exactly.
The court said, all right, so stick to his experience.
Ms. Shrofa said, they all sued her, so it is their experience. It's not just his experience. He joins a lawsuit, and that has nothing to do with whether or not he's sophisticated or unsophisticated, dumb or smart, litvac or not litvac. She stole his money. He sued her. So what, you can read all you want.
Mr. Finkel said, please address your questions to the judge, not to me. I don't make any decisions here.
Ms. Shrofa said, and we're very grateful for that.
Mr. Finkel said, me too.
The court said, please, 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 Mr. Horton.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, question was about what he had heard from unknown about other investors. Your Honor said the defense shall advance questioning of each witness's own investment experience. That's why I objected.
Ms. Shrofa said, it's not the investing experience. It's the stealing experience. She stole.
The court said, did you want to say something, Mr. Finkel?
Mr. Finkel said, no, Your Honor.
The court said, you can ask whether he brought a lawsuit, but I think we cannot go into all the other stuff.
Ms. Shrofa said, how about I ask him if he joined a lawsuit? Germany.
The court said, no.
Ms. Shrofa said, he can't personally because he's in.
The court said, well.
Ms. Shrofa said, how about if I ask if he has knowledge that a lawsuit was brought against Saraway?
The court said, no, no.
Ms. Shrofa said, can I ask him if Saraway stole his money?
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, first of all, beyond the relevance of this other lawsuit, it's not clear on that. And getting through, you hear there's something happened with other people that they did. Then we're going to have to make a hearsay objection.
The court said, yes.
Ms. Shrofa said, the relevance.
The court said, I understand.
Ms. Shrofa said, the relevance is that they're arguing that Ms. Wei remain a co-conspirator of Mr. Gua all throughout the conspiracy.
Mr. Finkel said, no, we're not.
The court said, just ask a leading question. Ultimately, legal action was brought against Ms. Wei like that.
Ms. Shrofa said, okay.
Continued on next page. In open court.
The court said, sir, if you're asked a yes or no question, just answer yes or no. Do not add any additional information. Do you understand?
The witness said, okay.
The court said, go ahead.
By Ms. Shrofa.
Mr. Dai, did you think that Sarah stole your $155,000?
Mr. Horton said, objection.
The court said, sustained.
Do you know if there was a lawsuit filed against Saraway for the return of money?
I know.
And did you know through either this court or any other means that Saraway and Mr. Gua had a falling out?
Mr. Horton said, objection, hearsay. Objection raised at sidebar.
The court said, sustained.
Mr. Dai, did there come a time when you actually managed to invest in GTV, correct?
Can you repeat the question?
Record read back.
Correct.
And how many shares did you receive in exchange for your investment?
I invest in 155,000 shares.
Could we go to GXBR 430, and if I could go to E2983? And if you could highlight that for him. Do you recognize this document and what it shows?
I can see my name on it.
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, we move GXBR 430 into evidence.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, may I voir dire?
The court said yes. Voir dire examination.
By Mr. Horton.
Mr. Dai, have you ever seen this document before?
I don't recall.
Mr. Horton said, we object.
The court said, all righty, so I'm not going to admit it.
Ms. Shrofa said, May I, Your Honor?
The court said, go ahead.
By Ms. Shrofa.
Do you know if there was an SEC action brought that listed all of the investors that got a refund?
Yes.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, may we ask that the document be taken down? It was not admitted.
The court said, Please take it down.
And were you shown a list of everybody who did get a refund?
Could you repeat?
It's okay. I'll move forward. Mr. Dai, did you get a stock certificate for 155 shares that you purchased in GDV?
Yes.
Now, could you tell the jury if you actually used the GDV platform?
Yes.
And could you tell me when is the first time that you started using the platform?
It should be April 2020.
And you could tell us how often you used it?
Approximately 5 hours per day.
And is it fair to say, Mr. Dai, when you saw bugs on the platform, you let people know so that the platform could be fixed, correct?
Yes.
You considered yourself an investor in GTV, correct?
Yes.
You considered yourself a user of GTV, correct?
Yes.
And you also considered yourself a tester of the GTV platform, correct?
Yes.
As an investor, you were committed to strengthening the GTV operation platform, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Dai, do you have an understanding of what entity owned GTV before the private placement?
Soraka.
And what is your understanding based on that Soraka-owned GTV?
Soraka should be GTV's parent company, that it has 100% share of GTV.
And that is reflected in the PPM, correct?
Correct.
And you read the PPM, correct?
Mr. Horton said, asked and answered.
The court said, Sustained.
And, Mr. Dai, do you have an understanding of what entity was the majority owner of GTV after the private placement?
Soraka.
So before and after the private placement, Soraka was the owner of GTV, correct?
Mr. Horton said, asked and answered.
The court said, Sustained.
Mr. Dai, did you have an understanding about how Soraka control of GTV remained in place even after the private placement?
Mr. Horton said, objection, compound and asked and answered.
The court said, Sustained.
Ms. Shrofa said, I didn't ask a single question about control. Mr. Dai, after the PPM, it was Soraka that controlled GTV, correct?
The court said, Sustained.
Did you have an understanding of who controlled GTV?
Mr. Horton said, same objection, Your Honor.
The court said, Sustained. Move on.
Was it your understanding, Mr. Dai, that the private placement was a successful one?
Yes.
And, in fact, that was your understanding because it sold more shares than it was expected to sell, correct?
Correct.
And the additional shares that was sold was shares that belonged to Soraka, correct?
Yes.
And when Soraka sold those shares, the money that came from selling those shares went back to Soraka, correct?
Mr. Horton said, objection.
The court said, Sustained.
The additional money that came from selling of the Soraka shares went back to Soraka, correct?
Mr. Horton said, same objection.
The court said, Sustained.
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, may we have a sidebar?
The court said, Okay.
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
The court said, Mr. Horton.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, this was the same objection that Mr. Ferguson made during the testimony of Mr. Dragon. The witness is being asked to vouch for the truth of essentially a disputed fact. The documents that contain that assertion are not in for their truth. They're in on for the effect on the listener. It's not appropriate in our view to have him ratify their truth through the questions of Ms. Schroff.
Mr. Ferguson said, if I could just add. I don't think there is any document that said they raised a lot more money. But the document just says they were selling 200 million shares. There's no evidence at all that Soraka sold its shares and somehow Soraka didn't send the money payment, which is where they're going ultimately. There's just no basis for this, so we object. There's no personal knowledge.
The court said, What basis would he have to know this?
Ms. Shrofa said, He said he read the PPM. He did his own research. And if Soraka sold the shares, because he knows, it was all over Discord. It was everywhere that the demand for shares was in for greater than what was being sold. So when Soraka, first of all, it's just logical. I don't mean to use the quote. I apologize. If I sold my shares, the money would come back to me. So if Soraka sells its shares, the money goes back to Soraka. It's a basic proposition.
The court said, I just don't think he is in a position to know.
Ms. Shrofa said, they're free to cross him on whether or not he knows or whether he has a basis to know or not.
Mr. Skirik said, and he will say that was his understanding, Your Honor.
Ms. Shrofa said, it is his understanding and therefore, it is his understanding. I'm confused as to why we're not allowed to ask his understanding of what happened after Soraka sold his shares and who got the money.
Mr. Skirik said, we understand the government disputes it. Clearly, it's a fact at issue. But why a witness who was an investor? Studied the PPM is very careful and cautious, can't testify as to his understanding. It goes directly to materiality. It goes to every issue in this case.
The court said, but it's not in the PPM.
Mr. Skirik said, it can be inferred from facts in the PPM. They're free to cross on that, Your Honor, if that's their point of view.
Ms. Shrofa said, it doesn't matter whether it's in the PPM or not. We're asking about his understanding. His understanding may have come from a boat of wisdom from God.
Ms. Murray said, it's hearsay.
Ms. Shrofa said, it's his understanding. You can cross on it.
Mr. Ferguson said, he's not competent to testify to something that he doesn't have personal knowledge of.
The court said, I don't feel that there's any foundation for his knowledge of this at all. Where the money went, that it went back to Soraka, no. So you're going to have to move on.
Continued on next page. In open court.
The court said, sustained.
The witness said, Your Honor, can I add something?
The court said, no. You can't volunteer any information. All you can do is answer a question. And there is no question before you at this time. Go ahead, Ms. Shroff.
By Ms. Shrofa.
Mr. Dai, was Soraka the controller? Was Soraka?
The court said, sustained.
Was the company Soraka discussed on Discord?
The court said, sustained. Sustained.
Did you have any knowledge about Soraka?
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, cumulative for the last several questions.
Where did your understanding of Soraka come from?
My understanding of Soraka was from the prospectus.
The court said, all righty. So you've got to move on now.
Mr. Dai, what entity did you send your money to?
Mr. Horton said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Did you send your money to Soraka?
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor.
The court said, what is the time period that you're speaking of?
Ms. Shrofa said, at the time of his investment. When he was buying shares, you sent money to Soraka, correct, Mr. Dai?
Yes.
Mr. Dai, when the funds was sent. Was it your understanding? What was your understanding of how that money would be used?
This money would be invested into GTV's development.
And if the money was sent to Soraka, was Soraka free to use its money?
The court said, all righty. No. He has no basis to know what Soraka was free to do or not.
If the money didn't belong to GTV, that entity was free to spend its money any way it chose, correct?
Mr. Horton said, Objection, calls for speculation.
The court said, sustained.
Mr. Dai, did there come a time when you became aware that the United States Securities and Exchange Commission had seized funds from GTV and was trying to return them to investors?
Mr. Horton said, Objection to the characterization and may require sidebar if it's repeated.
The court said, I'm not hearing you, Mr. Horton.
Mr. Horton said, We have an objection to Ms. Schroff's characterization in that question. The court has ruled on this issue.
The court said, you've got to refer to it in the formal way.
Mr. Dai, did you learn that SEC had reached a settlement and therefore had the money that the GTV investors had invested into GTV?
Yes.
And did you receive a refund as a result of that?
Yes.
And did you get a full refund of the money you had invested into GTV?
No.
How much was taken out?
I think there were 7.5% less.
And do you know to whom that 7.5% went?
Mr. Horton said, Objection.
The court said, sustained.
Did you want the money that you had invested in GTV returned to you, Mr. Dai?
Mr. Horton said, Objection.
The court said, You can answer that question.
If SEC sees the money, I would wish them to return the money to me. But if it's up to me, I want the money to stay in GTV to help with the normal operating development. I do not want the money to be refunded to me.
Mr. Dai, did there come a time when you learned about an investment that had been made in a hedge fund?
No.
Did you learn about the specific nature of that investment, which was shortening the Hong Kong dollar?
No.
Mr. Horton said, objection.
The court said. He answered no.
Mr. Dai, did you learn about an investment for shortening the Hong Kong dollar?
The court said. He just answered no.
Ms. Shrofa said, I don't think he answered that particular question, Your Honor.
Mr. Horton said, I heard it. The court heard it. I think we should move on.
The court said move on.
Ms. Shrofa said, he did not answer that question, Your Honor.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, it's almost 4 o'clock.
The court said move on.
Do you know what shortening the Hong Kong dollar is?
Yes.
And did you know of any investment in that respect?
Are you referring to GTV?
Yes.
GTV did not invest in shorten the Hong Kong dollar.
Who did?
But I heard Soraka.
The court said. Don't talk about what you heard.
Mr. Horton said, we move to strike the testimony.
The court said, the but I heard part is stricken.
Mr. Dai, did you have an understanding as to who invested in the shortening of the Hong Kong dollar?
Mr. Horton said, objection, foundation.
The court said, sustained.
Did you have an understanding of who invested in the Hong Kong dollar?
The court said, sustained.
Let me show you what is GXV 1158. Okay. Could I go to the next page, please? Could I go back to the first page? Thank you. Mr. Dai. Do you recall watching a video where Mr. Gua talks about investing in Kalbei's fund?
Yes.
In that video, does he talk about an investment in shortening of the Hong Kong dollar?
He mentioned it.
And he mentions also that the loss is Soraka's loss, correct?
Yes.
And it is Soraka who invested in the Hong Kong dollar according to this video, correct?
Yes.
And it is Soraka that bore the loss, correct?
Mr. Horton said, objection.
The court said, sustained.
In your mind at that time when you watched this video, Mr. Dai, was that investment a high-risk investment?
The court said, which investment?
The investment into shortening of the Hong Kong dollar?
Shorten Hong Kong dollar is a high-risk investment.
Did you have an understanding of what funds Soraka used to make that investment?
The court said, sustained. Sustained. There's no amount of commentary that permits you to get to a question that I have already said you cannot ask.
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, he watched this video, which is the transcript.
The court said yes. I understand that, but you are putting words into his mouth.
Did you watch this video, Mr. Dai?
Mr. Horton said, asked and answered.
The court said, asked and answered.
And in this video there was discussion about Soraka investment, right?
Mr. Horton said, asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
From watching this video, did you have any understanding as to whether Soraka made its investment?
The court said, sustained. Sustained. Move on.
Was it your understanding, Mr. Dai, that it was Soraka that made the investment in shortening the Hong Kong dollar?
The court said, all right. You're going to step up now.
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
The court said, Ms. Shroff, your impertinence is crossing the line and I have to warn you that you must stop this because there are consequences for disregarding the court's ruling.
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, this is an exhibit that the government has put into evidence. The exhibit itself speaks to precisely this topic. The government introduced not only the video, but it also introduced the transcript of the video. Mr. Dais testified that he watched the video and was informed by it. So all I'm trying to do is to figure out what his understanding was as a result of watching a piece of evidence that the government introduced into evidence. It was not at our doing. The government introduced it, and he testified that he watched the video. So I'm not quite sure why. I'm not trying to disobey your ruling. I'm trying to figure out why his understanding is something that they would object to. It's not hearsay. It's his state of mind, and it's his state of mind at the time that he watched the video. I'm not trying to be impertinent. I'm just trying to figure out what I'm doing wrong because it seems like the understanding question seems like a proper one. It doesn't elicit any hearsay.
Mr. Horton said, "Look, there's two issues. The first is that this witness is testifying about the materiality of statements made in connection with an investment. It happened after he invested in GTV is one thing, so we have a relevance objection to that."
The court said, "This is a statement that's made afterwards? That's a problem."
Ms. Shrofa said, "It's only a problem if we're asking for anything other. I'm not asking him if it impacted his investment." Right. I'm not asking for that. I'm asking you, watched a TV show, right? You saw the TV show and you had an understanding of what happened. They put in the video. He saw the video. I'm asking his understanding. That's it. What is objectionable about it other than the fact that it harms their case?
Mr. Horton said, "If she wants to do, you watched a TV show and you saw what happened on that TV series of questions. We won't object to that. Did you believe Miles Gua said these things? No objection." She's asking him instead. First it comes in just for the effect, and then it's, do you believe that it was true?
Ms. Shrofa said, "I did not ask if he believed it was true at all, sir."
Mr. Horton said, "I'm starting with relevance, and clearly he is being asked to be a mouthpiece for hearsay. The notion that there's nothing to it, the court has sustained like 4 objections in a row. If there's nothing to it, we're now delaying endlessly Your Honor's ruling. Your Honor's ruling was limit questioning to each witness on investment experience. This is a question to a witness about a statement by Miles Gua after the investment."
The court said, "To the extent that it comes after the statement that video could not have influenced the investment decision."
Ms. Shrofa said, "And therefore it does not go to reliance, and therefore they have no reason to object to it at all." What I'm trying to show is that he looked. Let me try it this way. The government showed these same videos to its witnesses, right, who they called victim. And they asked them what was the impact on them. So why is it in good for the goose and not the gander? I'm not trying to disregard anything this court is saying. And I ask Mr. Skirek to help me out. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of it. If he can do it, why can't I?
Mr. Horton said, "First of all, reliance has no place in this criminal trial. Look, at the risk of repeating myself. He's being asked to endorse the truth of Mr. Gua's statements in the defense case in a matter that's irrelevant. I believe that's why the court has ruled multiple times in a row. And Ms. Shroff has quite really steamrolled Your Honor's ruling. We are here at sidebar because she asked the same question multiple times after you sustained the same objection to the same question."
Ms. Shrofa said, "And I've asked the same question multiple times because you've done the same questioning with your witnesses."
The court said, "Right? But my ruling with respect to your witness is that you should limit your questions to his investing experience, not the post-investing experience."
Ms. Shrofa said, "If he watched any of Miles Gua videos after the investment period closed, and it reinforced his belief in the investment or all, so the government is not going to be able to show him 6 videos afterward and ask him, right, hey, did this change your mind? Did this tell you that Miles Gua was lying? Does this video tell you that it was really a cult he was investing in?" They're not going to be able to do that either, right? Because they've done it with every witness.
Mr. Horton said, "Your Honor, the court's ruling, I'll permit the defense to ask its non-victim witnesses." And that's in quotes, about what information they considered and what weight they gave to various statements, and yes, doing all of that in deciding to invest. So, first of all, this is not in deciding to invest. Second of all, if Ms. Shroff wants to ask him, what weight did you give to what Miles Gua said, this was the truth. That's fine.
Ms. Shrofa said, "Ms. Shroff is trying to figure out why it is that after the SEC returned his money this man still wanted to invest. One of the reasons he didn't want the SEC to give him his money back is because Mr. Gua did nothing wrong. The investment was Soraka, and it was Soraka's money to do with us Soraka chose. That is his understanding. I know you don't like the understanding, but Ms. Shroff is not trying to steamroll anyone. Ms. Schroff is just trying to defend her client in exactly the same way that you're defending yours.
Mr. Finkel said, "That's exactly what Your Honor precluded is that exact point." His view of whether he was defrauded or whether GTV or Soraka used the money incorrectly. His intent? This witness's intent, just like the other victims, their intent was not relevant. What matters is Miles Gua's intent. And that's why we introduced this video, because it speaks to Miles Gua's intent. Because when Miles Gua was making the statement, we are going to argue that he knew they weren't truthful because he knew that he used investor money to invest in payments. That intent matters. Reliance, which Ms. Schroff has used to justify the relevance of this witness, has no place in a criminal fraud trial. Which this is. This witness's testimony, as Your Honor already held, is relevant insofar as it speaks to materiality. Which is to say the information he considered and the weight he gave that information when deciding to invest. That's a quote I believe directly from Your Honor. This is post-investment. They're trying to vouch for the truth of what their client said. That's improper. Your Honor already ruled that this shouldn't happen.
Mr. Skirik said, right before this series of questions, Your Honor. Ms. Schroff spent several questions trying to ask precisely what Mr. Finkel just described, which was what his understanding was at the time he was making the investment. What his understanding was about who the money was going to, Soraka or GTV. And for what purpose and who had control of the money, and what use could be made of that money. And they objected to the point where we couldn't explore that issue at all. And to hear Mr. Finkel describe that and read from Your Honor's ruling, I think just reinforces that line of questioning going back to the May period of time which we tried to explore before. It is entirely proper and it's frankly the key issue in this case.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, they did get that in.
Ms. Schroff said, we didn't.
Mr. Finkel said, Excuse me, Ms. Schroff.
The court said, 1 minute. Mr. Finkel.
Mr. Finkel said, Thank you, Your Honor. They did get that in. Did you read this document? He said yes. Did you read it in Mandarin or in English? Did you read the PPM? I read it in Mandarin and English. Did you think it was risky? What research did you do? We didn't object to that because that went to materiality. That was Your Honor's ruling.
The court said, I'm not going to permit this post-investment line of questioning.
Ms. Schroff said, Your Honor, we didn't get to. If the court wants to, it can. But every question we ask about his understanding of whether or not Soraka sold his shares pre-investment. Soraka invested. If Soraka got its money back, the government objected to every one of those questions.
The court said, he has no basis to.
Ms. Schroff said, I wasn't allowed to explore his basis because they objected. I tried to ask if he had any basis to know that from Discord, from his own resource, from anything that he investigated about Soraka. They objected to every single question about that. And as Mr. Skirik says, this is a point that we think it's proper for multiple reasons. And I can understand why the government doesn't want this evidence in. It's clear. But that does not make it irrelevant. And actually I said that it could not be reliance because this testimony is post-investment. So obviously it's not about reliance. So I don't know why Mr. Finkel is talking about reliance at all. The question that he objected to went to reliance, went to what scope of knowledge and information this witness.
Mr. Skirik said, not reliance, but what information he had access to and what his understanding was at the time. And he couldn't get it into it.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor ruled I think 3 times now. We're happy to be heard more if you'd like.
The court said, I don't want to hear more from any of you.
Continued on next page. In open court, the witness said, Your Honor, please give me a chance to. Earlier there was a question.
The court said, Sir, at this time there is no question before you, and you can only answer questions that I permit you to answer. Go ahead.
By Ms. Schroff.
That's how it works in the United States, so we have to listen to the judge and move forward, okay? Mr. Dai. Let me ask you something. Were you a member of G Clubs?
Yes.
And could you tell the jury, please, what is G Clubs?
G Club is club, provide high-end life experience and events, let people join events together. Offered opportunities for fellow fighter in the whistleblower movement join. G Club is symbol of identity. We are very happy to join the club to join with people share common faith.
Mr. Dai, what did you mean when you said symbol of identity? Could you tell us?
It's a membership eligibility. It can provide various benefits.
Ms. Shrofa said, I can't tell if he's still speaking, Your Honor. It's too far.
Mr. Horton said, is there a question pending?
The court said, Ms. Shroff.
Ms. Shrofa said, I couldn't tell if he had finished. That's why I asked the court. Mr. Dai, did G Club give you a place to meet people who were of symbol culture?
A place to meet.
Did G Club give people, let me rephrase that. Were the membership in G Clubs reflected a similar mission and similar interest?
G Club in fact is open to all and they can buy the membership and enjoy the different benefits.
Continued on next page. By Ms. Shrofa.
Mr. Dai, how did you learn about G Clubs?
Initially from Mr. Gwa's live stream.
And by live stream, can you tell me what you mean by live stream?
Mr. Gwa mentioned in his live broadcast that there is such a club called the G Club, and people can join.
And were you interested in following up and learning more about G Club membership?
Yes, I was interested, and I came to know more.
And did you buy a membership in G Club?
Yes.
And what level of membership did you decide to buy?
Tier 5.
And how much did you pay for a Tier 5 membership?
$50,000.
And when you filled out the application form to get membership in G Club, did you do it online?
Yes.
And on what web browser did you fill out the application?
Should be Chrome.
And maybe my question was inartful. I'm sorry. Did you go on the G Club's website to fill out the application?
Yes, on G Club.
And did the application form have a series of questions?
Yes.
And did you fill out each answer online?
Mr. Horton said, asked and answered.
Yes.
And after you answered each one of the questions, did you have to agree to the terms of the membership?
You need to.
I'm sorry I interrupted you. What did you say?
The court said, he said, you need to.
Okay. And you in fact did that, right? You put in the check mark?
Mr. Horton said, objection. Asked and answered.
Did you put in the check mark?
The court said, so don't repeat the questions, please.
Yes.
And did you get a confirmation that you are now being considered for membership in G Clubs?
Yes.
And you were told, were you not, on that application website that if you wanted to cancel, you had 14 days to cancel your application for membership, correct?
Yes.
And did there come a time when you got confirmation? Electronic confirmation that your membership in G Clubs was good and ready for use?
Yes, I received a confirmation email.
And at that time you did not get any confirmation that you were going to get GTV shares because you got membership in G Clubs, correct?
Mr. Horton said, objection. Argumentative.
The court said, overruled.
G Club and GTV seems to be not related at all.
Thank you. Now could you tell the jury what benefits you got for being a member of G Club?
G Club can provide some G Fashions purchase discount. For example, on my tier, I have a 50% discount.
Let's just stay with G Fashion for 1 minute, okay? Sitting here today, Mr. Dai. Do you remember when you became a member of G Club?
I suppose it is end of October 2020.
And since October of 2020, have you shopped G Fashion?
Yes, I have.
And do you shop G Fashion just for yourself or also for your wife?
For me and my wife and my family.
And how many other members are there in your family?
2 kids.
And did G Clubs also have benefits for its members on hotel discounts?
Yes.
And did G Clubs also have benefits for Formula One games at the Grand Prix in Monaco?
Yes.
Did G Clubs have travel discounts?
Yes.
And did G Clubs have sweepstakes each year?
Yes.
And did G Clubs have a newsletter, Mr. Dai?
Yes, through email, newsletter through email.
And did you get those newsletters?
Yes.
Did you read them?
Yes, I have.
And are you a member of G Clubs now?
Yes.
And have you ever had any problems with your G Club membership?
No.
And do you pay annual dues on your G Club membership today in 2024?
Yes.
And how do you pay your annual fee? Using what?
I use the Himalaya Exchange, HDO, $.
Okay, so that's a good segue. Let's talk about the Himalaya Exchange now, okay? Mr. Dai, could you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, how did you first become aware of the Himalaya Exchange?
First time I learned about Himalaya Exchange was supposed to be the end of 2020 or the beginning of 2021. And I also heard that from live stream from Mr. Guo.
This live stream, on what platform was the live stream?
GTV.
You know what? Actually, I apologize. How much money did you spend on G Fashion? I forgot to ask you. My bad.
My estimate is about $20,000.
Okay. And what clothing did you buy clothing or something else?
I have bought different things. Clothes, jewelry.
And have you been satisfied with the quality of the clothing?
Yes, satisfied.
And are you satisfied or happy with the jewelry you bought?
Satisfied, and I like them.
And did you keep them or did you return them?
I have kept them.
Okay. Now, sorry about having to go back, but I was asking you about the Himalaya Exchange, right? Where did you first hear about it? On what platform?
Mr. Horton said, asked and answered.
Ms. Shrofa said, actually, I didn't have an answer. I went back to G Fashion, so...
The court said you may answer.
Supposed to be through GTV, Mr. Guo's live stream. That's the first time I heard about Himalaya Exchange.
Mr. Dai, would it be fair to say that you listened to lots of Mr. Guo's live streams?
Yes.
Sitting here today, would you be able to say you listened to all of them?
I'm not totally certain.
And eventually you came to understand that the Himalaya Exchange was a cryptocurrency platform, correct?
Correct.
And you knew from Miles Guo's broadcasts or from some other means that the system of Himalaya Exchange was going to be built in multiple stages, correct?
Mr. Horton said, objection to form, Your Honor. Compound question.
Ms. Shrofa said, I'm happy not to lead.
Mr. Horton said, that's not the objection. Compound question, calls for hearsay.
The court said, lead but in not compound sentences.
By Ms. Shrofa.
You wanted to know how the Himalaya Exchange would function, correct?
Yes.
And you had an understanding that the system was going to be built in multiple stages, correct?
Yes.
And that HCN and HDO could be traded on the Himalaya Exchange, correct?
Yes.
You were attracted to the exchange because it had good security, correct?
Correct.
And you understood that the exchange was developing an internal blockchain that would ultimately connect to the Ethereum blockchain, correct?
Correct.
And you understood that while it was similar to Bitcoin, there was an added layer of security on the Himalaya Exchange, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Horton said, objection to the testimony.
And how did you know that, Mr. Dai?
The court said, overruled.
This detailed information, I was looking at the white paper issued by the Himalaya Exchange.
Could you tell us?
And then.
Go ahead. Sorry. I didn't know he wasn't done.
Then also, when I'm using that in the Himalaya Exchange, I confirmed those functions.
Okay, let's talk about the white papers. Where did you find the white papers on the Himalaya Exchange?
On the Himalaya Exchange website. They have the corresponding HCN or HDO page and where you can download all the white papers.
Did you download all of them?
Yes, I did.
How many were there, do you recall, that you downloaded?
For HDO and HCN, Chinese and English, so total at least 4 different documents.
I'm sorry. Just to be clear. Were they 4 documents in English and 4 documents in the Chinese language?
What I meant to say was HDO white paper has English and Chinese and HCN also has English and Chinese white paper.
Did you read in both languages or just one?
I read in both languages.
Could you tell the jury how logging into the Himalaya Exchange system compares to your experience registering for a bank account in Europe or in Germany?
The Himalaya Exchange, when I registered, compared to register a bank account in Europe. It's a little more complicated because the security confirmation too, like the MT, money laundering and others. It's a lot of the terms and lot of the documents, and also, for ID verification, it's more strict comparatively. In Europe, when I open a bank account, it's easier after identify ID.
Mr. Dai, did you also register your company for an account on the Himalaya Exchange?
Yes.
And in doing that, did you have to submit original documents with notaries and stamps to the engineering department before you could register your company?
Correct.
Did there come a time when you started to use the Himalaya Exchange?
Yes, I'd be using it.
Since when?
Since after the registration. That would be April 2021.
And what is it about the exchange that you liked?
Because it enables me to invest in cryptocurrency, and also the HDO, it sort of relate to the US dollars. And I can invest because the HDO has the fluctuation in price. And also through HDO to purchase. And so the whole transfer and operations were very quick and convenient.
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, may I just have one moment, please?
The court said, okay.
Mr. Dai, could you tell the jury why you registered 2 accounts, a personal account and a company account, on the Himalaya Exchange?
For the business account, because I think that in the future, the company, when they're making sales, I can use the Himalaya Exchange to collect the payment.
And what does it mean to say that you could top off your account on the exchange through your bank account?
I don't understand your question.
Okay. Could you transfer US dollars to your exchange account to purchase HDO?
Yes, I can.
And once you have the HDO, you could convert the HDO into HCN, correct?
Yes.
And how much money did you invest into the cryptocurrencies on the Himalaya Exchange?
Altogether, over 300,000 US dollars.
And is it fair to say that because you were a GTB investor, you had an opportunity to make a priority purchase of the coins for 10 cents per coin?
Correct.
And you purchased 200,000 HCN, and that cost you $20,000, correct?
For 200,000 HCN, it would be 200, it will be $20,000.
$20,000. My bad. My math is off. $20,000, right? And you did that, right?
Yes.
Did you also purchase on the secondary market?
Yes.
How much of your purchase was on the secondary market compared to the initial purchase, or the priority purchase?
300,000 US dollars, roughly.
And at what price point on the secondary market did you purchase HCN?
Roughly from $6 to up to $40 US, anywhere in between.
And how did you decide what purchase points at which to purchase HCN?
Because HCN price have been increasing, and so I thought there are a lot of potential to grow. So I continue to purchase on the secondary market.
Mr. Dai, have you been satisfied with your investments in the cryptocurrency on the Himalaya Exchange?
Yes, I'm satisfied.
And is that because HCN continues to grow?
Correct.
And as an investor, you wanted to capture the growth momentum, correct?
Correct.
And did there come a time when you tried to take money out of the Himalaya Exchange?
I have.
And can you tell the jury about your experience with that process, please?
To HCN change to the HDO and then HDO to US dollars, 1-to-1. So then I can take the US dollars out into my own bank account to receive US dollars.
And how many times have you redeemed ACN?
About 5 times altogether.
And by the way, before you started redeeming it, did you do a test run to see if it worked?
Yes, the first time I tried it, it was for testing.
And was that a successful test run?
Yes.
Did you have any trouble with the exchange?
Mr. Horton said, Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Mr. Dai, have you heard the phrase that HCN is backed by gold?
HCN does not have any backup with gold, not mentioned in the white paper.
Have you heard the phrase HCN to the moon?
Yes, I have.
Do you think that has anything to do with HCN or the value of HCN?
That's not a direct influence, because I think it's, for the HCN customers, it's their mission. But for the HCN development trend, seems like it's growing.
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, just one moment. Let me show you what is marked as Defense Exhibit 60740. Ms. Shrofa said, and if I could not have the jury see it right now, please. And if you could just flip through that. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, I can.
And what is it, sir?
This is AHPay software, a screenshot.
And whose account is it a screenshot of?
It's my account screenshot.
Ms. Schrofa said, Your Honor, we move the document into evidence at this time.
Mr. Horton said, no objection.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit 60740 received in evidence.
Ms. Schrofa said, So let's show the first screen to the jury.
By Ms. Schrofa.
Mr. Dai, we're having some technical issues, so while they're trying to fix that, let me ask you something. Do you know when these photographs were taken?
Last night.
I'm sorry?
Last night.
Do you know around what time?
About 7 to 8 or 9 to 10 p.m.
Okay. And who took these screenshots?
Myself.
And did you use your cell phone to take screenshots of your own cell phone?
Yes.
And do these photos reflect the process by which you would sign on to Himalaya Exchange?
I don't understand your question.
Okay. I'll try it a different way. Do you have a Himalaya Exchange app on your iPhone?
This is a Himalaya Pay app.
Ms. Schrofa said, Okay. Your Honor, we're having some technical difficulties. May I just have a second?
The court said yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, Thank you. Okay. Here we go. Does that work for you? Can you see it?
Yes, I can.
Okay. And hopefully the jury can see it? Okay. Let's look at the first page. Could you tell me what that is? Ms. Schrofa said, Actually, could we go to the next?
Himalaya Pay app's top page, or the front page.
Okay. And can we?
Before I get on the web.
Okay. And you see that little sign down there that says login, correct?
Yes.
And is the first step where you log in?
Correct.
Okay. Let's look at the next screen, shall we? And this screen tells you this is where you put in your password, correct, and your email, right? Email, password. Correct?
Correct.
And these two boxes tell you that you have to agree to the terms and conditions of the exchange before you can sign on. Right? Sign on to HPay, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then the next screen would show you putting in your Gmail information, right? Your personal information is not there, but your password is shown, correct?
Yes.
And you have to tick you're not a robot, and then you hit login, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So let's look at the next screen where you've marked I'm not a robot, correct? And then we go to the next screen after that. And tell us what this screen shows. Could you tell the jury what this screen shows?
So this one shows its secondary verification and there is a one-time security code is sent to my cell phone.
Okay. So once you get that security code, where do you put it in on the next screen?
So in the center here, there is the one to fill in the code.
Okay. And this is I'll move on. Let's look at the next page, okay? And where it says resend, right? You see a number? It says 38S, right? But below that, before I get there, I'm sorry. Actually, let me go to the box on the left. And it says to enter a 6-digit code, correct?
Yes.
And the 6-digit code, is it sent to your cell phone number?
Correct.
Okay. And what does it mean where it says 38S?
That means that's the first time it's sent, and you have to wait for 60 seconds before it's sent a second time. So this is counting back to 38 seconds.
Okay. Let's look at the next screen, right? And it now shows 32 seconds, correct?
Correct.
On the resend. And then on the next slide of Himalaya Pay, what does this show you?
This is where is my Face ID is verifying.
Okay. And is that why it's buffering at the bottom over there?
Correct.
Okay. Let's go the next page. And this is all on your cell phone, right?
Yes.
Okay. Could you tell us what this page shows?
This page shows a Himalaya Pay. After I load it at the top page, it shows in Himalaya Pay HCN and HDO's balance.
And what is your HCN balance?
54,112.
And what does it mean on the left side where it says 1 HCN equals 19.959 US dollars?
This means the Himalaya exchange, the real-time HCN price is 1 HCN equals 19 US dollars and 95 cents.
Okay. And then the corresponding on the right, it's how much you have, right, in your HPay account?
Correct.
Okay. And what about the line below that says HDO?
So the HDO underneath here is the H dollar balance.
Okay. And what's your H dollar balance?
is 8.98.
Let's look at the next page. And what is it that you're trying to do here on the screen?
This is that enable me to transfer the Himalaya Pays balance to the Himalaya exchange.
Okay, so how does it work? What does the word token mean?
This token meant HDO or HCN. So it's corresponding to whatever the cryptocurrency type. So I can choose HDO or HCN.
Okay, and on this particular screen, what did you choose?
HDO.
Okay, let's look at the next screen. And what does that show you? Could you tell the jury?
This is to enable me to invite others for a payment.
Okay, let's look at the next page. What part of the app is this?
This is the account setting page.
And let's go to the next screen. And tell us what this shows.
This one shows that all the transaction record through Himalaya Pay.
Okay, so let's flip to the next page. And you see that where it says gift card redemption?
Yes.
And who is that from?
This one is what I use to purchase G-Fashion clothes.
Okay, and what is the incoming transfer under column below or the row below? Sorry.
This is to change the Himalaya balance into the HPay wallet.
Okay, and we could keep going to the next page. And what does this show?
This one is through the HDO on G-Fashion, when I made a purchase, that's the detail.
And let's go to the next page. And what does this show?
This is what I transfer HCN to.
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, may we ask the interpreter to speak up because it's very hard to hear.
The court said, all righty. If the interpreter would please speak up.
The interpreter said, We're switching, Your Honor. Thank you.
It's like a red envelope.
The court said, is there a question?
Ms. Shrofa said, Oh, I thought she said it was a red envelope. Is that what she said?
The interpreter said, Actually, if we can make an application, we would like to reinterpret the previous question. Thank you.
The court said, okay. Go ahead.
The interpreter said, I need a moment. I'm ready. Could you repeat the answer? Actually, the question, please. The question.
The court said, the question.
Ms. Shrofa said, Okay.
The court said, all right. Would you read back the question?
Record read.
This page shows that a transfer record from me to a friend.
And before I heard you say this is a red envelope. What does that mean?
Yes, you can see under what I wrote in Chinese, the money got a rise on the 5th day of New Year. This is a red envelope.
What does red envelope mean to you?
This is the cultural tradition between Chinese people during the Lunar New Year that they will send red envelope to each other to show their best wishes.
Okay, let's go to the next page. And this shows that a transaction is complete. It tells you the transaction status, correct?
Correct.
It shows you the time of the transaction being complete, right?
Correct.
And then it shows you the transaction number, correct?
Correct.
And it shows you the receiver's account, so the person who is getting the money, correct?
Correct.
And then it gives you the receiver's name, correct?
Yes.
And what does it mean on that note that says you are the one?
This is from me to my wife, in fact.
Okay, fair enough.
This is my first transaction on Himalaya Pay.
All right. So let's go to the next page. And this is where you send money to someone and you're saying, best wish to your family, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And let's look at the last sheet here. And you said you took this screenshot yesterday in the evening, correct?
Yes.
And when you took this screenshot on your cell phone, is this the warning that showed up?
Correct.
And you get that warning from HPay, correct?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Dai, how long have you been using the HPay app that we just reviewed here?
Since the early 2022, where you saw the first transaction.
Okay. So that would be February 2nd of 2022?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's see if we can show you the video, please. Mr. Dai, while they're trying to put this up, did you make 2 videos yesterday?
Yes.
And what are they videos of?
I used Himalaya Pay, logging in and show the functions within. Another one is that I used Himalaya Exchange on the computer, I log on and show the functions within.
And how did you make the video?
I used the iPhone and the computer. Both have recording functions.
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, we move both videos into evidence at this time.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, just given the time, to the extent they're not cumulative of the screenshots we've just seen. We wouldn't object, but if it's just a video of the screenshots, we would.
The court said, is it cumulative?
Mr. Horton said, also, we haven't seen the exhibit that's being offered, so we'd have to see it first.
Ms. Shrofa said, it was sent to you yesterday.
Mr. Horton said, well, what I mean.
Ms. Shrofa said, it's not cumulative, Your Honor, as, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Horton said, we haven't been shown the exhibit that's being offered, so as is typical practice throughout this trial. We'd ask that the party show the proposed exhibit to us before offering it. It sounds like it would be cumulative. But we haven't seen it.
The court said, all right, so you first need to show it to the prosecution.
Ms. Shrofa said, we sent it to them.
Mr. Horton said, the objection is not that it wasn't produced. It's that it hasn't been shown to the parties before being offered, as every other exhibit was throughout trial.
The interpreter said, Counselor, we're having trouble hearing you. If you could speak into the mic, please.
Ms. Shrofa said, should I show it to the court and the government, Your Honor?
The court said, go ahead.
Ms. Shrofa said, can you see it?
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, this appears to be the video of the screenshots we've already seen. We object as cumulative.
Ms. Shrofa said, just one moment.
Mr. Horton said, same objection, Your Honor.
The court said, is there something new in the video that we have not already seen?
Ms. Shrofa said, so can we play this so that the government can decide if this too, in their mind, is cumulative? Your Honor, I just want to put for the record, DX60741 is a video of the HEX website, 60742 is the video of the use of HPay, and 60743 is a video of somebody actually making a HDO transfer on the exchange. So those are not cumulative of each other. And I'm happy to discuss further at the sidebar if the court wishes.
Mr. Horton said, if I could have just 1 second, Your Honor, please. No objection, Your Honor. I assume we're not going to cover ground that's already been covered.
The court said, so Mr. Horton, we're just not able to hear you because you're so far from the mic. I want the reporter to get everything that you say.
Mr. Horton said, I apologize. No objection. I assume we're not going to cover ground that was previously covered.
The court said, okay, so they are admitted.
Defendants Exhibits 60741, 60742, 60,743 received in evidence.
The court said, are you going to play them now?
Ms. Shrofa said, if that's possible, Your Honor. Or we can do them Monday.
Court said, no. Let's get going.
Ms. Shrofa said, all right. Well, let's play them for the jury. Let's play the last one first, shall we?
By Ms. Shrofa.
Okay. Mr. Dai, tell us what this is.
This is my account from Himalaya Pay and transfer HDO into Himalaya Exchange. Here I transfer 7 HDO.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, we object. We were shown a lengthy video. This was not part of it. None of the lawyers.
The court said, so I did not see this either. So you need to first play it for the attorneys and then...
Ms. Shrofa said, okay. Sorry, we can show it to them separately.
The court said, is that it?
Ms. Shrofa said, yes.
Mr. Horton said, if we could have a brief sidebar on this document, Your Honor.
The court said, all right.
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor. This video we just saw for the first time has a calendar on it indicating that it was made yesterday. The government doesn't object provided that, and I'm sure this is not something that the defense will do. But just to be sure, they're not going to make any argument that because the Himalaya Exchange is working today, happens to be based out of Abu Dhabi right now, run by William J.E., that makes it somehow okay or legal, in other words. They'd be arguing that because we didn't stop the exchange, not going to the government's investigative techniques and choices, that it would make it okay. assuming they're not going to argue anything along those lines, which I hope is the case. Then we don't have an objection.
Mr. Kamarju said, I just didn't hear the last thing you said about investigative techniques.
Mr. Finkel said, so as you know, the government's investigative techniques and choices are not on trial. So whether the government has chosen to, for example, take down the Himalaya exchange or whether it exists in Abu Dhabi and run by William J. at the moment. Those are questions that aren't for the jury to consider. So provided those arguments aren't made, the government has no objection. It's a nuanced point.
Mr. Kamarju said, we're not going to argue that the government elected to let the Himalaya exchange keep going and so that's some evidence of.
The court said, legitimacy?
Mr. Kamarju said, legitimacy or whatever.
The court said, I don't understand why any of this is relevant. What is happening today? I don't understand why you have an objection to all of this conduct that has nothing to do with the allegations in the indictment.
Mr. Skirik said, well, Your Honor, he testified that he started using HPay app in February of 2022.
Ms. Shrofa said, but that's part of.
The court said, right. So if that's the case, show him the video from February of 2022, not from today.
Mr. Skirik said, the transaction history and the screenshots we just showed. And the live use of the app that reflect those transactions is 2024.
Ms. Murray said, on this particular video, Your Honor, we completely agree the primary basis is a relevance objection. Particularly if what they're showing in the new video is a transaction that took place yesterday. That has nothing to do with this witness. If it were relevant, which it is not, it would be cumulative of the exhaustive walkthrough we did of the sign-in process for the HPay app.
Ms. Shrofa said, which is exactly how the Southern District prosecutors do it. And I'm going from one who is now an ex-prosecutor and therefore, it is being done exactly in the Southern District way, which is what Leonard Joy for years taught us. That the best way to beat the government is to act like the government. So that is why. But number 2. The fact that if a video was made yesterday or in 2022, all he's doing is having a demonstrative to show how easy it is to walk through it. And he's entitled to show that because it's exactly the same process. And if you think it's not the same process, you can cross him.
The court said, so to the extent that the current video reflects 2022, then it is relevant. But I don't understand why the other stuff that happened last night is relevant. But let's show the videos and get it over with.
Ms. Shrofa said, thank you.
Continued on next page. In open court.
Ms. Shrofa said, all right. Just so that we can show this to the jury, could we just play it? Mr. Dai. I'm not going to ask you any questions and just let it play, okay? If that's all right with the court, Your Honor?
The court said yes. Go right ahead.
Ms. Shrofa said, okay.
Media played.
Ms. Shrofa said, thank you. You can take that down.
Mr. Horton said, is there a question pending?
Ms. Shrofa said, yes. We're pulling up the last video.
Media played.
Ms. Shrofa said, and if we can just pause here.
By Ms. Shrofa.
And can you just tell us, what does this screen show?
Here shows the date range 2 months, the trend of HCN in recent 2 months.
Ms. Shrofa said, and if we can fast forward it along a little bit, please.
Media played.
Ms. Shrofa said, now if I could just have you pause just there. On the Himalaya Exchange website, you can see all of your transactions from the very beginning, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Shrofa said, okay. Let's just keep moving.
Media played.
Ms. Shrofa said, and if you can pause there on the trade. It would show you all your open orders all the way back to when you first opened your account, correct?
Mr. Horton said, objection. Asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
How about your order history? I didn't ask that.
Mr. Horton said, objection, relevance.
All the way back to February of 2022, it would show all of your order history, correct?
The court said, you may answer.
Yes.
And it would show your trading history and your portfolio, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Shrofa said, could I go back to that screen? I'm sorry, Jorge. Okay, and you see the rest of the information there. It would take you back all the way to the very inception of your account, correct?
The court said, asked and answered.
Ms. Strofa said, I'll move forward, Your Honor. Keep playing, please.
Media played.
Ms. Strofa said, and could you go back for a minute? What is the first date on the left-hand side? Ms. Strofa said, could you go down, please? I'm sorry. I have the wrong. Could you scroll down, please? On the left. Keep scrolling down. You see at the bottom there?
Now I can see.
Could you read?
Yes.
Okay. And what's that date?
September 12, 2022.
Okay. And that's because that's how you write your dates in Germany. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. We can keep going further.
The date and the small point in Germany were different.
I understand.
The court said, all righty. It is now 5 p.m. Members of the jury, our work has come to an end for the day. And now you have that long weekend to look forward to. Remember that you're not allowed to discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. Don't permit anyone to discuss it in your presence. Don't read, listen to, or watch anything from any source that touches on the subject matter of this trial. I wish you a wonderful weekend.
Jury not present.
The court said, sir, you may step out of the courtroom.
Witness not present.
The court said, please be seated. Ms. Schroff, how much more of this witness do we have?
Ms. Strofa said, I think maybe 15 to 20 minutes. I don't anticipate longer than that, Your Honor. Maybe 20 minutes.
The court said, is there anything that anyone would like to raise before we break?
Ms. Strofa said, not from the defense, Your Honor.
Ms. Murray said, just a few things, Your Honor. So with respect to scheduling. Appreciate Ms. Schroff's estimate that this witness will be done after about 3 hours of direct Monday morning. We'll move on to the subsequent witnesses. I don't know whether the defense will rest on Monday absent Mr. Gua's testimony at this stage, given how long the afternoon has taken. But were they to rest on Monday and Mr. Gua decides not to testify, we wanted to confirm that closings would proceed on Tuesday. To that point as well.
The court said, I'm sorry, you want to confirm that?
Ms. Murray said, closings would be on Tuesday. If the defense rests on Monday, the defendant doesn't testify and the government has no rebuttal case. We just wanted to confirm whether closings would be on Tuesday.
The court said yes. At 9 o'clock on Monday, we will have our charging conference.
Ms. Murray said, okay. And then I guess an additional question is whether the court might consider asking the defense to identify a time on Sunday. Perhaps noon. By which they will advise the court and the government whether Mr. Gua intends to testify so the government can adequately prepare. For efficiency.
The court said, so that would be very helpful, considering that we have just next week and I don't want to lose these jurors.
Mr. Kamraju said, excuse me, Your Honor. I will confer with Mr. Guo over the next few days and provide an answer to the government and the court. Obviously it is ultimately his choice, he can change his mind. But I will certainly represent to the court and the government by 12 p.m. on Sunday what his understanding is and what his intention is at that time.
The court said thank you.
Ms. Strofa said, Your Honor, actually, I think it should be 1. Because of the MDC weekend hours, could we have until 1?
The court said yes.
Ms. Strofa said, thank you.
The court said, anything further?
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, just one issue. Just related to the sidebar. I just want to make sure I understand the defense's position, so we don't have to brief it needlessly. It's not just that the government techniques in terms of whether to take down the Himalaya exchange. To the extent it could, it's in Abu Dhabi. But I assume the defense is not going to argue that the mere fact that it exists online today is somehow relevant to what Mr. Gua intended when he made misrepresentations. And so I just want to confirm that understanding that the defense won't make such an argument.
The court said, well, whether or not they make that argument, now that the jury has seen the videos and heard the testimony, they will naturally be wondering why it is still existing.
Mr. Finkel said, right, which may require an instruction about whether it's relevant to the charges if it exists or not. And the government wants to think about that, but there's still a difference, I think, Your Honor, between just the jury hearing some evidence and the defense arguing about it in closing. And so I just want to confirm to see whether there is an issue, which we may need to brief if there is, that the defense won't argue that the existence of the Himalaya exchange today, the fact that it exists today, or clubs, for that matter, because there's testimony about that too. Clubs is in receivership, that those concepts will not be argued to show that these were legitimate enterprises because they presently exist today, which isn't relevant.
The court said, Mr. Kamraju?
Mr. Kamraju said, "We don't intend to argue either one of those things, Your Honor."
Mr. Finkel said, "The word intend is a tricky one."
Mr. Kamraju said, "I'm sorry, Your Honor. Since I'm the only one who's going to do the argument, I will not make that. If that makes Mr. Finkel feel better."
Mr. Finkel said, "It does. Thank you. I guess last, Your Honor, and actually, we just discussed this. I think to the extent the court is interested in setting time limits for closing arguments, the parties have a joint proposal for the court, which is closings for the government and the defense would each be 3 hours, and then a rebuttal, which I think would allow us to finish all the arguments on Tuesday, which seems to be where we're heading. And then I guess Your Honor would charge them on Wednesday, and we'd go into deliberations."
The court said, that's fine. And if you confer and decide you wanted to make those summations shorter, that also would be fine.
Mr. Finkel said, "I know, but we have to talk about all these videos and logging into the Himalaya exchange." "No. I'm kidding. There's a lot to go through. But Your Honor's point is well taken and certainly something I and my colleagues will be thinking about this weekend. I'm sure the defense will too. Happy July 4th.
The court said, Happy July 4th to everyone.
Mr. Finkel said, "Thank you, Your Honor."
Mr. Kamraju said, "Thank you, Your Honor."
Adjourned to July 8, 2024, at 9 a.m.